All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Deep End. This is number 57, and you guys are not going to believe this, but Ari and I, before we recorded, just spent the last 45 minutes chatting. We recorded, not recorded. We pretty much had another whole episode's worth of content, of conversation before we started recording, and it just always happens. I know I say this every week. It's like beating a dead horse. But this always happens, and we always say, should we just go? Should we just be recording this? And so let's pick it back up. We're kind of middle of a conversation, getting into something really juicy here. Ari, man, first of all, good to be back with you for another episode. Why don't you set the stage for what we were talking about? Where are we at here? Pretty juicy convo.
I'm going to fast forward to what really was important.
Okay.
I mean, like you said, we spoke for a good 45 minutes, and yeah, it's always a pleasure to jump on with you. And you know what? It goes back to why we started this, because Ryan and I would have, weekly discussions anyways on various topics, investing related, life related, everything.
Yeah.
And then one day it was just like, hey, let's just start recording this for everybody, because we thought that it would be useful. And we still think it is useful. Thanks everyone who's telling us exactly that in the comments and following along and in the deep end with us. But that brings us to tonight. And we even started talking about this topic yesterday.
Yeah.
And the topic comes down to change and just like how much everything is evolving. And so tonight, Ryan and I are talking, we're talking, and then we started to get into this topic of what we were talking about yesterday, which is then when I said, should we start recording this? Because we're about to get into the juicy details. But here's the setup of the stage. Literally everything that, just from 5 years ago, whether it's, YouTube itself, content itself, across social media to investing products, it's all changed. And I think really this is something that we need to talk about, because for better or worse, everything that we once knew is changing, and change is not always bad. It's a part of life. And if we weren't evolving and growing, then I think we'd honestly be in a worse off position. But I think what we're seeing now, I mean, I'd like to say it's unprecedented times. It really is. Just looking back or thinking back to when Ryan and I first started our YouTube channels, we were talking about dividend stocks. And Ryan, I even got a comment earlier today on a video of mine from a few years ago, ironically.
Oh,
and
wow.
Someone put 2.34% dividend yield. You call that high?
Yeah, that's funny.
And I'm like, well, if you look at when the video was published, it was 5 years ago. So at that point in time, people were pretty amazed by that. Now, if you say 2.34% dividend yield, I mean, that's small potatoes. So just in terms of financial products, it's crazy to see the change. But I want to throw this into the mix, the deep end mix here. And then Ryan, I'll let you, go in whichever direction we want to kick it off first with. But can we talk content real quick? Because no longer are these long form videos, even the hottest videos to be watching lately. It's all about short form content. And I personally feel, as someone who's a reader and a writer and just I'm going to out myself as a nerd, you can't learn much on an Instagram 30-second clip with just someone kind of yelling at the screen and look what I made, and then buy this, and then all of a sudden so I feel like we're losing out on a lot. So I'll pass it over to you, which direction you want to run in, but it's crazy.
Well, there's a couple problems. Listen, there's pros and cons to short form content. The pro is that it's easily digestible and easily consumable. And I think if that's someone's starting point with all this investing stuff, and that is the gateway to get them started, then right on. Whatever gets you in the game, I'm all for that. but I will say, and I've certainly been on the receiving end of this myself. It's hard to, it's hard to get all the context and the nuance that you need in a short 60-second video, 60 seconds or less. And whenever I put out videos like, I'll do short, like, buy these 3 stocks at 52-week lows or whatever. I'll do those short stock list videos, and it's not uncommon to get someone commenting like, okay, it's cool that they're down, but like, shouldn't you include like some explanation for why these stocks are down? And it's like, yes, totally 100%. Like, you're thinking about it the right way, but there's only so much that you can put in to a to a 60-second clip. There's just only so much you can squeeze in there. So the format itself, it doesn't really lend much depth. You can't really go super deep with it, which can be problematic. But on the other hand, kind of like we were talking about before we started recording, Ari had a really good point, is because these videos are so short and there's not really much content, they're easily replicable. There are, you could see 10 creators word for word making the same exact video. And, for some creators, they see that and see how easy it is to make, remake videos, just copy it, rip it word for word. And that's what they do. They build their entire, content strategy around that, which just tells you that they're in it for the wrong reasons and their incentives are all messed up. And, you should, I don't know, it's not entirely great to follow those kinds of people who are only in it strictly for the views, and the views are important, but it's also not everything. And I feel like I could probably keep going on in circles, but I'll pause right there. Ari, do you have any thoughts on that? Any of that?
Yeah, when it comes to, the content copy, if you will, like I guess it's really frustrating in some sense, because if you're someone who's in this game, who is actually in the game to help investors, and then you got to compete with, I love the faceless channels. Those are, that, like, you can often find a lot of these carbon copy examples in the faceless channels. But because it's faceless, it's so easy to just, whatever content, and then you're just carbon copying. Or even if it is, a channel that shows face, I just feel like we've lost our way in terms of like authenticity, investors coming on here to help fellow investors. And it's like, what are we really on here for? Fame? If that's the case, then I say shame on those creators. And it even comes down to product, financial product. Take a look at Wall Street, like the products that are being created today. I think it's sad. I think it is, to an extent, really sad that, and it's always been this way to some extent. I think right now it's the worst it's ever been. Because if we think back to the dawn of humans, right, I feel like there have always been people who egotistically wanted fame and egotistically wanted all the riches and, everything to their name. But I think it's the worst it's ever been because of how easy it is to create content. And it's the worst it's ever been because it's so easy to just hit buy on an application or to market your products if you're, in Wall Street marketing product. But like, I just don't see today's, like, dude, the world of investing is just so different from 5 years ago. That's crazy to me. It's so different from 10 years ago. I had someone on Masters of the Market the other night, and we were having a chat, and he was, an investor for 40 years now. And so like, he was just saying like the Roth IRA wasn't even there when, and he wanted, if he was like, if there's one thing I wish I could have done, but I couldn't even have done it, is the Roth IRA. But there have been products, or there have been tools that have come out that have been very necessary and very helpful. And then there have been products and tools that have come out that have been very dangerous. And I think today, because of the way how rapidly technology is advancing, it's just getting dangerous. Like
Mm.
I can scream this from mountaintops. Early young investors who want to throw their money into, covered call ETFs because they're yielding 60, 70, 80, 90%. It's just flipping dangerous when you're going to buy and hold. That's not what those funds are there for. But yet they're on the market. They're yours for the taking if you just quickly hit buy in a Robinhood or whatever app you have. It's just scary, man. It's so scary.
You know what's funny, man? It's not funny. It's actually sad. I don't remember if this was on Instagram or if this was on Blossom. But a couple days ago, I think it was on Blossom. I saw a post from someone. It was one of their first couple posts on the platform. Um, and they said something to the extent of like they posted a screenshot of their MST. I think it was MSTY or MSTE, which I think is the Canadian version of MSTY. I could be slightly off on that, but they posted a screenshot of their position in that fund, whichever one it was, and the caption of the post said something along the lines of like, I feel totally misled by whatever this fund was. I thought I was buying into it with like a 200% yield, and all this fund does is continue to go down and go down and go down. And now this investor, long story short, basically they felt like, there was like a rug pull. They had the rug pulled out from underneath them. And it's the sad part is like they put their trust in this product created by Wall Street professionals who I think they thought were on their side, paired with the advertised juicy yield. And lo and behold, it did not go the way that they expected. And obviously, they are far from being alone in feeling that way. But I think it's really too bad that that type of experience and reaction to that experience is so prevalent. And it probably speaks to a couple of different things, one of which is what you described with the products on Wall Street, which they're going to do what they're going to do. But on the other side, it just speaks to how much, number one, how complex these products can actually be, and number two, how undiscerning the everyday investor can be, and how much due diligence does not go into putting money into these products before it's done, which is a huge problem. And I think, Wall Street's always going to do what Wall Street's going to do, and those goalposts will keep moving and new products will come out. There will be new iterations of the hot thing, whatever it is at the time. But one thing that will never change is that it will always be your responsibility to know what you are putting your money into. And so for this person in the post or others who've had a similar experience, like, it sucks. It really is sad to see people lose money on these things, on anything, and hopefully it doesn't scar them from investing more in the future, because the stock market can be a great place. But, still, to that person, the key takeaway here is you have to know what you own. And if you're looking at something and you don't quite understand it, or, maybe it seems complex and maybe for some reason that's maybe why you trust it, don't. You have to know what you own. It's that's always going to be true no matter what you put your money into.
I love that you said that, because first of all, that is a reality. Like, we can blame, Wall Street, we can blame creators. I always say this, at the end of the day, someone always has to pick up the ball and take accountability.
Yeah.
And so if it's your portfolio, it's no one else's fault but yours. Because at the end of the day, you hit the buy trigger or
Yeah,
the sell
100%.
trigger. But I will say this. I think there is, Wall Street accountability and creator accountability. That's very, very important.
Yeah.
And, you can, no one's going to read, hardly anyone reads a prospectus, unfortunately. And if people did, they would actually find in every single one of those high yield covered call ETFs, it needs to be there that these funds are reset daily. They're not long-term buy and hold opportunities. No one reads that. So they invest in them. I think the sad reality is this. it comes to the creator economy then, because Wall Street's going to do what Wall Street's going to do. Wall Street's going to create products that people are going to buy. What you said is true. Wall Street is not in the business of helping you.
But
Wall
I
Street is in
mean,
the business of being a business, right?
yeah, and sorry to cut you off. That's not to say that all of these products are bad or Wall Street's just a ton of snakes. There's good players, there's bad players in any industry. Like it, and so I don't want that to be misconstrued that I think it's all evil. There are certainly some good products and some good companies within that. So sorry, I just wanted to add that asterisk.
No, I mean, look, that's hand in hand with what I'm about to say, which is there's a time and a place for those products.
Sure.
And a lot of these products, by the way, there's something out there called a sophisticated investor.
Ooh,
and a sophisticated
fancy
investor, yeah.
Not this. I don't know why I did the Dr. Evil, but I meant
$1 million.
The pinky out. Ooh, fancy.
A sophisticated investor is someone who's a little bit more experienced. They have a little bit more wealth behind their name.
They wear a monocle and a top hat.
Yeah, exactly. And they're more well versed in the market. And at a certain point in time, back when people really had to pick up a phone and call a broker, or call their advisor to call the broker, then the main question that would go into investing into these types of products was whether or not you were a sophisticated investor. Because if you're not a sophisticated investor, they probably weren't going to put your money into these types of opportunities. But what's happened is, and that's the whole thing is like, when you really think about it, man, like, I'm happy that advisors don't necessarily need to be in the picture because anybody can learn this game. What happens when you start cutting out middlemen, though, is all of the accountability goes on you. And so now you have to ask yourself, like, are you, quote unquote, a sophisticated investor? Do you really know what you're doing? Because if you're just watching a YouTube creator or a content creator and then you're just buying because they bought, or you're just buying because it was on a hot stock list or hot ETF list, and then you're losing money, that's when I say, like, shame on you, because you just didn't do any research or due diligence. You're not a sophisticated investor. You don't know what you're doing. And though, on the other hand, though, like the Wall Street side, like I was saying, man, like Wall Street it's a business. You're in the business of a business. And so you're making products based off of what your market wants. Your market wants income now. Okay, so here's how we can get you income now. But here's how that's going to work, right? That's in the prospectus, the how to, or the what is this product. And so it's just like a hosh posh of all this information that no one's really taking in. It's a free for all. And, I think it's even scarier to start to think about where the market, or where we're going to go. Where are we going to go?
Yeah, so let's extrapolate that. Let's kind of get into some of that. And I think we should talk about it both from a creator standpoint and also from like maybe a Wall Street or investment product standpoint. And I think it's important to talk about those because the two, in a sense, go hand in hand. And I want to kind of set the stage a little bit more and go back in the past before we look to the future. When you and I first started in this space making videos, five years ago, whatever, coming up on 6 actually. But anyway, a handful of years ago when we started in this game.
Crazy.
This was just, I mean, the whole thing, the whole space was just like a dude and a camera talking about what they're doing in their portfolio. We always bring this guy up, and we were talking about him before we recorded, but he's a great example of this, Bruce Wang. Any of you OG YouTube watchers out there in the finance space, you'll remember Bruce Wang, but he was one of the guys that really like motivated me to start my channel. And that's all he was doing. It was just, he was coming on, sharing portfolio updates, sharing what he was buying, just him and the camera. And it was very basic. It was just very basic and straightforward. And as time goes on,
Ryan, do you remember what one stock he bought hand over fist, like every video?
So it went through different stages. I think at one point, Well, I think Realty Income was one of them. I could be wrong
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Was that what you
Like
were going to
every
say?
video, man. Because at the time when he was at his like hottest, like Realty Income was at its lowest.
Yeah.
And I just remember every time he would come on, he's like, I'm buying more realty income, more realty income, and like monthly income, monthly income. And I got on the Bruce Wang train, man, because I was
Yeah.
like, wow, like, this thing's divvying out monthly income, and Bruce Wang's buying it hand over fist.
So, but then what happened with Bruce Wayne is he got caught up in a lot of, from what I remember, he got really involved with GameStop and AMC. He was riding that wave. And for a period of time, a lot of the creators were doing that, were just making videos about the daily update to GameStop and AMC and the meme stocks. And what happened at that point, I think that's where we really started to see somewhat of a shift in the whole space, because at that point the goalpost moved. And then it started to become more about the hype and what's working. And you guys might have a different opinion, but from my perspective, that's when it started to change to more things that are, I don't want to say breaking news, but it's like super urgent, super dire. You need to know this information right now, right this second. It kind of started going away from being just a guy in a camera talking about, his portfolio that he's building, to now, GameStop just plummeted 26% today, or whatever it was. It became a bit more just hyped up and urgent. And I think that's kind of been the general trend in this space, kind of the evolution. The goalposts keep moving from being something more basic and innocent, straightforward, to really being, people doing it to drive the views, or drive views. And views have always been important, but back in the day, there was a much more, I guess, well-intended way to get them. You didn't really have to do things as crazy as you do today. And that creates bad incentives and moves the goalposts even further down the road, to where things just get crazier and crazier and crazier. And that kind of ties into these investment products, because as more eyeballs started being, coming to these videos, or coming to content in this space on whatever platform, well, Wall Street takes note of that, and that's become a big way of how they market these products. And I'm sure that, and Ari, let me know if I'm wrong about this, or jump in at any time too, because I know I'm going on a tangent, but I really want to kind of bring us to where I think we're at today and how we got there. These products have always existed in some form. There's always been kind of more complex, potentially like riskier investment products. But I think back in the day, maybe they weren't as prevalent, or they weren't as known about to the average investor, because information wasn't as accessible. There was certain publications like, the Wall Street Journal and, Barron's and whatever. But with the advent of social media and people just making content at a massive scale, just distributing every day on these platforms, it's become easier and easier to get access to the information, which is good. But then again, on the other hand, you also hear about some of these not great products as well. And you pair that with the goalposts moving and incentives changing. And I think it's kind of created a recipe for disaster. So I think that kind of brings us to where we're at today. More people watching this stuff, more access to information, means that we hear about more of these products, which means also like more people are talking about these products, which means more people are buying these products, which creates more of a market for it, which means even more products are coming out. And those new products have to compete with the already existing products. So they move the goalposts there and try and one up the pre-existing products. And it's this kind of vicious cycle. Long tangent, I apologize. Hopefully all of that made sense.
My reply here
Where do you even
goes
begin
back.
with that?
It goes back to the 1960s and 70s.
Good old days.
More mortgage-backed securities. That's what in the 1960s. That's when the mortgage-backed securities started. 60s, 70s, and then you get into the 80s. I mean, Wall Street has just continuously, obviously, been full of greed. People who are looking to make money, people who are looking to become the big guy and sell to the little guy. And I think, yeah, with the advent of all these technological advancements, it's just become easier to market to the little guy. It's become easier to sell the little guy. Like I said, you can continuously be cutting out the middleman. By the way, you cut out the middleman, who's making more than at the end of the day, vis-a-vis fees and whatnot.
Mm.
Now you don't have the middleman there, right? So there's just a lot going on. But at the end of the day, a lot of these products, they could be fun. Mortgage-backed securities. If you watch any of these old Wall Street movies too, The Boiler Room, right? It's a classic example. They're all the same. Like these guys are going wild with money. Fast forward all the way to The Wolf of Wall Street. Guys go wild with money, and it's greed. It's greed at the end of the day. But it's also greed at the end of the day when it comes to investors, retail investors, everybody. I was listening to a podcast earlier today with Charlie Munger. And actually, one of the questions that came to mind for me on that when I was listening to the podcast is like, is Munger's words, are these words even relevant anymore?
What was he saying?
He was just talking about like valuing a business and, how to look at a business, what to invest in, when you're basically, he was saying, one of the strong points he was making was Warren and I love to invest in businesses that anybody can run, or in Charlie's classic, that someone stupid can run.
Yeah.
And if you had to pick between businesses, smart people, or good businesses, invest in good businesses, because good businesses always last. Smart people will come and go. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I was just like, this is such great advice for life and investing. Is it even relevant today? Because in my mind, I'm like thinking about like, I can go look at Blossom and I just look at everyone's portfolios. Yes, there are people who have individual stocks in their portfolio, but far less today than, 5 years ago. 5 years ago, individual stocks were the hype. ETFs were in people's portfolios, but like they weren't the hype. And now ETFs are the hype. And again, it goes back to that comment I was talking about earlier, like, 2.34% dividend yield that's high. So because of the new products that are out, it just makes me think about the future. I'm like, where could we possibly be going from here? And, I know that 3X, 4X funds, like who knows what type of X funds are about to come out. And that's going to be exciting for a hot moment. To your point, with creators who are creating the content of like, hey, like, this meme stock fell. Look at this news now. What's really hot now is Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. Now it's down. Now you have to buy, and then it's going to go up. And it's like all this information, but like whatever happened to just like good, boring investing? That I feel like is just like not spoken about anymore.
Well, why would you watch a video? Why would you watch a good, classic, boring investing video when there's 10 other videos over here that are talking about why the market is going to change forever on February 9th, and you need to know that information right now? That's the problem.
Then the thumbnails fire and everything's going to hell.
So it's like, yeah, well, that's what I was saying earlier. It's the reason that stuff is not cool is because it is boring. But this just goes back to human nature in general. People, good investing is boring. Investing, I think it was Monish. I know you've been actually listening to a lot and studying up on Monish Babrai, which I love. I think he's great. He said something like, you'll be a good investor if you like watching paint dry. And that's the truth, but that's a truth that nobody wants to hear or adhere to. Everyone wants to be, the hot, flashy investor who's day trading and, going up 10% every single day and winning on this super speculative biotech stock or hot tech stock that no one else has heard about. They want to find, those super fast growing diamonds in the rough, and everyone wants to be that person who's kind of like the Nostradamus. They always make the right decisions and know what's going to happen next. But that's just not the reality. It's not. And doing things the slow, steady, boring way that is effective is not as fun.
Ryan, do you think this was and is like the has been the plan the whole time? Like, I hate to get into like almost conspiracy theories, but I really do believe at this point in some of these conspiracy theories that like those at the table, right? Those who have money and power and all, like they're creating the rules. And so all this hysteria and everything that's going on and then you look at what those guys are doing, they don't do a whole lot. Right? They actually are the ones who keep to the Charlie Munger type of advice, right? Like just buy a high quality company and then do nothing. And then the market's reacting to all these other things. And they're living life and enjoying because they're not going crazy. I just feel like what we're in, I mean, I hate to say it, but it really sometimes it feels like a simulation to some extent. Like when I'm going to give you a good example. It doesn't even have to do with investing. So, I work with a lot of guys when it comes to like life and mindset and all that stuff. And there's a guy I'm working with right now who, and I always say this, the hardest thing any man or woman has to do is nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
And so all of life can come into your world and just rock you like nothing else has rocked you. And if your response can literally be just standing up and letting all of life hit you, you will be a man. Like life will make a man out of you, or a woman in that sense. I personally look around and I'm not impressed with I'm just not, man. So I see life hitting people like just a hurricane. And then I see them like feeble little boys and feeble little girls. And they cry and they whine and they complain and it's why me and life sucks and and it's a victim mentality. Now I'm going to go back to this guy, I'm working with now. This guy can't sit still, and I've watched him go from one city to the next city, back to this city, and just now, before we jumped on this very podcast today, I got a message from him. He says, I think I'm going to go back home to Maine because I just like nothing's working for me. And I said, I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I would do. And he goes, but you would tell me to just sit and do nothing as if the answer is just going to come to me. And what I wanted to tell him was, you idiot, that is in fact, when you keep running and you refuse to feel feelings and you refuse to feel life, you will remain on the run and you will remain a little boy. And I'm interested in making a man out of you, right? I didn't say that, but like that's the truth. And this is what's happening in investing. I think so many people out there are on the run trying to get rich, as I always like to say, by Tuesday, that you completely lose what it takes to be an investor. The hardest thing any real investor has to do is nothing. If you are holding a high quality company and you've bought it at a discount or at least fair value, then wait and do nothing. Watch paint dry. And people can't do that.
Unfortunately, and let us know what you think about all this in the comments too, guys. As we're talking about this is all just thinking out loud, which I think is kind of the beauty of these conversations. But let us know your thoughts on all of this stuff as well. Unfortunately, I don't think any of that's going to change. I think it's always been that way. It's human nature to want, and this is like well-covered territory with us, right? But people are always going to want the things that they want, and they're going to want them as fast as possible. And you can't blame them for that. But once again, it just goes back to your responsibility. It's your responsibility to know and uncover the fact that that's not how things work. And it's your responsibility to fight against that. And this is where personal development comes into play. And I think that that's where being an investor or investing in the market can be a great teacher of that if you let it. I think the sooner that you accept that this is going to take some time to do the right way, and that's a timeless principle that applies to anything worth having, I think the sooner that you can wrap your arms around that and fully accept it, the better off you're going to be. And unfortunately, we can say that every single episode, which we tend to do, but we can keep saying it until we're blue in the face. But it's just one of those things that investors will have to learn the hard way just by getting punched in the mouth. And that's the cost of tuition, as the saying goes. I don't think, and maybe at the end of the day, hopefully this doesn't just come off as us kvetching, because I don't want it to be that way. And kvetching is one of my favorite Hebrew words, by the way. It basically just means complaining. I learned about that one from Ari.
Yiddish.
Yiddish, okay. And so hopefully this doesn't come off like we're just kvetching this entire time. We really want to understand why things are the way they are for our own sake as investors and human beings on this planet, and where we can go from here and use this understanding hopefully to our advantage to be better people and investors ourselves, but hopefully pass that information along to you guys. But I don't know, I guess all of that is to say, knowing that ourselves, the best, we can't force that knowledge down people's throats. We can't force them to accept that and understand it. All we can do is try and live by example, I suppose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Sometimes I really just feel like shaking people up, because whether it's this guy, and I'm like, by the way, he's like about to go home to his family. Like, I'm like, you're in your 30s, man. Like, when you like, there's the things that I want to say, and then there's the things I say, So, but this is also to investors, right? It's like, here's the things that I want to say, which is, what the heck is everybody doing? Like, you want to watch short form content? Fine. Watch your short form content. But if you're not living the life that you want to be living, it's because you're watching short form content. You're not actually filling your brains oftentimes with what it needs to be filled with. Is anybody reading anymore? Is anyone doing that anymore? Heck, there has been videos I've posted. Masters of the Market is always a great example, because they're hour-long podcasts with other investors who literally share their journey about how they got from nothing to at least $500,000 or more, most of them $1 million or more. That's why I created that podcast. You can get everybody's journeys, different investing styles. And what is one comment that I see video to video often? Hey, can you make this shorter? I'm like, no, I can't make the story shorter, because this is this investor's story. But if you listen, if you just sit down and you listen, you're going to learn something. And not, so I can make it shorter, but I'm not going to make it shorter. So I always like to go back to Alex Hormozy's line when he's like, it's never been easier to become someone ridiculously successful today, because no one's willing to put in the freaking work. No one's willing to do it, man. I'm looking around. Man, I'm reading The Geometry of Wealth right now. Good book. But I got to say this. I feel like those ideas in that book, again, like once again, I'm like, where did time go? Because like no one's even talking like this anymore, or talks like this at all, really, that I hear. It's all just Bitcoin, covered call ETFs, money now, high yields. Man, I just like, it really does. I get infuriated by this stuff. And I'll tell you what, I'm just throwing this one out there too. I'm going all out, man. I'm like, now I'm on one. But there's someone I have in mind right now in his Instagram bio. he lists a couple of things that he is, okay? One of the things that he lists is athlete. You want to know why he has that, Ryan? Because he ran a 5K. I'm sorry, man, but I'm all for running and keep going. Love it. But, like, you're not an athlete if you run one 5K. Whoop-de-doo, right? Like, I'm out there every morning running a 5K every day of my life. And I'm not, I'm an athlete, you know? So I'm just like, man, I think we're messed up today. I really do. And I look, I was listening, like I said, to Charlie Munger this morning, and I'm like, man, I wish I was in his generation. I think times where he even talked about how politics of his time, it's not that there wasn't animosity between two parties. It was that there was disagreement but respect for each other. And so we, like today, man, if you're on the right, you can't listen to the left. If you're on the left, you can't listen to the right. And I just want to say to people, like, shut up. You know, like, how is anyone supposed to learn anything? And if you're a dividend investor, you can't listen to a growth investor. If you're a growth investor, you can't listen to a dividend investor. Shut up. You know, it's like, how are you going to learn anything about anything? You know, like, I just don't get it, man.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to bring it back to this whole idea of change and where things go from here. For investors listening to this, or really anyone, specifically investors listening to this, what are some things as we head into a still uncertain future? What are some timeless principles that investors really need to understand that are not going to change? What are some things that are going to still be true 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that investors would be well off knowing about? They can be principles, investing insights, anything like that. What's not going to change?
Quality businesses that are delivering valuable products, or, you know, whatever their product is, or service. Quality businesses are what you invest into. And if you buy them at a discount, that's where you make money. That will never change.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get really, really wealthy, you have to be a contrarian. If you really, really want to get wealthy, you'll amass a good amount of money buying quality businesses, dollar cost averaging. This is Howard Marks now I'm getting into. But he is a huge proponent of saying, advocate of saying, in order to get like ridiculously wealthy, it's about buying those high quality businesses when they are deeply discounted. When everybody else, and Charlie Munger said this morning too, when everybody else is running in the opposite direction, you're buying. That principle, that ability, those kahunas, if you can have it as an investor, those kahunas, you'll win every time. You know, the market was shaking this past week, and I watched Alphabet just flitter flutter. It's not even a word, but it went down, right? And man, I am looking to make Alphabet $100,000 plus position in my portfolio. I'm $19,000 away. And I was buying. And everybody else running.
I think that speaks to another timeless principle that's always going to be true in investing, and pursuing anything too, is you have to be able to maintain your own independent thought. You cannot, I mean, there's wisdom to be found in the herd and in the masses for sure, but you cannot always just follow the herd and what the herd is doing. The herd right now is selling off a ton of software stocks. They think it's the end of the road for them. If, you know, now on the other side of that, you know, to your point, now would be the time to buy those as they are seeing weakness and as the herd is losing their belief. But if you had belief in these companies before, in Salesforce and Intuit and Microsoft or whatever, before when Microsoft was at 480, you should be loading the boat right now when it's now, I think it's now back up above 400, but it briefly dipped below 400. And so you have to maintain that independent, unique thought if you want to really, really be successful.
Yeah, if you run with the herd, you're going to get average results. And I'm,
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who are out there who would say that they're actually okay with average results. I have to just share. I am not okay with average results. I want more. I know that there are other investors who are out there that perform well and they get above average results. I
Yeah.
want to be a part of the above average. It's not to say there's anything wrong with like literally sticking to the S&P and taking average results. That's great. I just want more because in obtaining more, what I ultimately have in mind, or what we always talk about in other episodes, right? It's time freedom. It's the ability to money doesn't buy happiness, but it certainly helps, right? Right?
Sure.
Like it alleviates. Actually, in the geometry of wealth, it talks about this. It's pretty interesting. Basically, there's the case to be made that past a certain threshold, which is about $75,000 in a salary, that's when money will absolutely make no difference. Because you really just want your basic necessities taken care of. Then happiness is on you.
Mm.
After that threshold, it's like,
Yeah,
how's your mental state?
it's the inner scorecard.
Yeah, exactly. And so everything thereafter that, like people aren't really factoring in money anymore. So that was pretty interesting. But I look at it. There's so much, man, I want to do in life. There's nothing to do with money. Like money's not the goal, right? I'll put it that
Mm.
way. Simply put, running out there and training for the marathon. I'm out there. I ran 15.5 miles today.
Ooh,
Yeah,
how was
man, I
that?
was out there. It's great. It's great.
Good
And I
job.
would have ran more. I would have ran more, but I had to walk my dog, so I had to come back. Uh, she she's I'm on a time crunch, man, with her. She's a great coach.
Yeah.
um, but every mile I ran today, I literally was just like, okay, this is why you're doing this. You are doing this to get really good at dying. You are killing off your old version of Ari to become a new version of Ari that's necessary to enter into the next phase of where I want to be and who I want to become. And that is everything, man. Like in order to handle millions and millions of dollars, you can't be the same old Joe of 10 years ago. You need to grow and adapt. And in order to take that 10 million and grow that, you need to become someone new. And this, to me, this whole game of life is a game of actually getting really, really good at dying. Like how well can you kill off your old self to recreate yourself and become someone stronger, to become
Yeah.
someone more knowledgeable, to become someone, more worthy of where you want to go in life. And, for me, this whole game, I mean, we always say it's the infinite game, right? But I'm just thinking when I am investing and what I foresee, my wealth amassing into, it requires me to do the things that the greats have done. Contrarian investing. It's hard. It's hard to look at your portfolio sometimes on a dip and be like, oh, I'm down $20,000, $30,000. And then that question, as experienced as I am, always does like it's like a little bird. It's like, will it come back? It's like it will, because this is the way it goes, right? But in order to get to where I want to go, man, you have to, like I said, be able to stand in the eye of the storm. Life is gonna rock your world. Can you just do nothing? Can you watch that
Well,
paint dry?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking about contrarian decisions, even going out and running the 15 miles, yeah, that's not directly related to investing, but that is certainly a contrarian decision. Most people are certainly not going to do that or be willing to even train for a marathon or anything like that. But being willing to do that hard thing certainly does apply in your portfolio because, you know, like you said, when times get tough, because you've experienced this thing outside of your portfolio, okay, the run is hard, I'm still going to do it anyway, and then after you do it, you're better off for it, and you realize, oh, this is actually good, I'm better off before. That applies to your portfolio in the same way. You buy the dip, it's not easy, to stomach sometimes, but in the long run, once the dip stops dipping and it goes back up and recovers, which it ultimately always has, and reach new heights, you'll be glad that you did it. And so it's important to take your head out of the market and seek other infinite games, because the lessons that you learn in doing those you can apply to your portfolio, and vice versa. It really is, I keep saying it, but investing really is such a good vehicle for personal development, and it ties into so many other personal development vehicles too, like running or lifting weights or, compounding knowledge. It all kind of goes hand in hand, which is really, really fun. It's really fun to have these hobbies in your life where that's true. But enough of a tangent about that. I mean, we've kind of talked about some things that are not going to change, some timeless principles. What about some things that are, like, where do things go from here? Like in terms of investment products, in terms of just investing in general. Do you have any thoughts? Anything you think is on deck? Where do things go from here?
Man, I do think we're gonna see a lot of, like, in my opinion, over the course of the next like few years. I think AI is actually going to be a tremendous disruptor.
Yeah.
And the more I study it, the more I'm not concerned about it. I'm welcoming it. I'm just super interested in like how much of a tidal wave it's going to cause, because dude, you look at like Amazon layoffs, UPS layoffs just across industries because of AI. Where do all of these people go? Because AI trains AI these days, so it's not like you're taking human capital and like now we're just making new software or something, right? Like, well, now software is making software, so like what happens, I really do take the Elon Musk approach where it's like in time, like I really do foresee like people are just sitting around. And but here's what I was getting into a little bit earlier with like the talk of the power players at the table, or being in some type of simulation, if you will. Those people who are in power, who have money and who are in power, I mean, just think about this, right? Like, okay, you have AI and quantum computing. It's like I don't want to say it's like the final frontier. Like, there's always going to be new companies, but like, how many new companies? Like over time, I think we're going to get less and less new companies. And then what are they creating?
Yeah,
You know
I
what I'm getting
mean,
at? Like it's just going to be less over time, and Elon Musk talks about this, where like in time, there's literally going to be robots doing everything and we're going to be idling by. So then what the heck are we going to be doing? And I think it's the people, really, talk about a conspiracy type of theory, but I think it's the people who are going to be well-read, learned individuals who understand the game and who are actually playing the game at the table. What does that mean? I've given great thought to actually getting off of social media and everything entirely. I'm not even just talking about like even just totally getting rid of social media, because we've spoken about, even in the beginning of this episode, but more so off air, how all the content creator, first of all, everyone's a content creator now, and then secondly, the content creators which is everybody, they're all just creating the same content and they're dubbing it as theirs. And I'm like, what the do I need to look at this for anymore? I don't. I don't need to look at Joe Schmo, who's all of a sudden become a fitness motivator or a motivational, creator who's barely run, the 5K, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know that I will die on a hill. That's my mentality. And I know that I will die on a hill at trying to outwork everybody and anybody. Not because I'm trying to just outwork you for outworking you. It's because I want to it's like Kobe Bryant, man. Kobe Bryant said it best. He always showed up. I don't know if you listen to Kobe Bryant podcasts or like any of his stuff, man. It's so epic. I agree and get down with the Mamba mentality, dude. It's like show up early, and when other people show up to the gym early, first of all, let them know you, like, because you were already there, then outwork them while they're there. And then when they leave and they look at you and you're still working, they're going to ask, how the hell do you do it? And then Kobe's response was always like, I just want to let you know that you were never going to outwork me. It was almost like a fear tactic he had with other people. I think ultimately where I'm getting with all of this is there's going to be a time and a place for people with the mentality of I will die on a hill. And I refuse to let my life go to the algorithm gods, the algo gods, and getting sucked into the social media platforms and all that. I don't see people reading anymore. When I have conversations with a lot of people, there's a reason why we call this the deep end. Like Ryan, you're one of the only guys in my network at this point who we can really go deep on topics. Most people run out of things to say. It's pathetic.
It's funny.
I don't know if anything I just said makes any sense, but that's where my head's at.
It makes a lot of sense. I have some thoughts on it. I will say, it's just kind of in response to the last thing there. It's funny because obviously we don't plan these conversations. We don't have a script. We don't have a script or really an agenda. We just kind of hit record after talking for a handful of minutes beforehand, always. But we just kind of hit record and see where it goes. And there's been times where I come into this thinking, how are we gonna fill this time? But it's like you blink and then an hour's gone by, which I think is really cool. And hopefully you guys listening feel the same way. But yeah, I think it's, I think you've raised some good points. And I do think generally speaking, there is unlimited demand and always will be unlimited demand for unique, authentic insight. And I think that was the really cool thing about social media at first. I'll just stick specifically to YouTube. That's what really drew me to YouTube in the first place, was people sharing their own unique insight and just doing their own thing and sharing their own journey and documenting their thoughts and progress and evolution along the way. And that's what motivated me to start doing this. That's still what motivates me today. And that's always been the backbone of the channel and always will be. And that comes oftentimes, especially as the platforms have progressed and evolved and the content within it has, this type of approach has come at the expense of views oftentimes. But I think as a creator, you have to think about, and also as an investor too, really, you have to think about what game you're actually playing and how you're going to measure success in your portfolio or on your channel or whatever endeavor you're embarking on. You have to decide what game you're playing and yeah, what you choose to as your yardstick. And I know for me, if I can, at the expense of whatever views, if I can still continue to impact people and say something that's going to resonate with people, and that comes as a result of just my gibberish, which, as you guys know, is not always coherent. But if it sticks and it lands, then, and it helps someone, then what more could I ask for? Especially knowing that it's my own and it's not carbon copied from someone else just because I see them getting views. I think that's how you have longevity in this game. I think that's how you make a real impact. And I think, as people consuming content in this space, try and discern who's doing it for, I don't want to call it the right reasons necessarily, but try and discern which creators are clearly just putting out slop and content just for the sake of getting views. It's kind of the game, that some are playing. It's kind of the game of YouTube, but it's not the only game that one has to play. So I think you need to decide which creators you want to give your attention to.
Well, I want to say, man, like you got to look at who's real, who's actually real. And that to me is the most important part of whether you're following a creator or if you have someone in whatever industry that you're in. Doesn't have to be finance, but when you look up to your idol, are they real? Or are they just another fluff on the internet? And so, like, the reason why I brought up, the guy who has the athlete in his Instagram bio is because I don't give a crap what you put in that bio. But just know that if you want to put athlete in there, I'm ready to go out any day of the week, right? And then it's like the real athlete will show up. And just know that if you put, I don't know, investor or top investor or whatever it is in that bio, I'm willing to go out there, right, every day with the real uniform on to like show up. And I think that's just, I think we're so lost, man, these days. I really do. I think we're just extremely lost. And I look at the real greats, Kobe Bryant, right? Like, we just don't have guys like that today, I feel like.
But that's
Warren
such a
Charlie Munger.
For you who is a contrarian in that way, and anyone who chooses to be that way, it's such a competitive advantage for you. If there is a surplus of complainers and whiners and complacency, that's your edge. That's the hard thing. It's always going to be the hard thing, and that's always going to be in shorter supply. But that's your edge. And that's also something that's not going to change. And so,
but that, man, I just feel like the moment people are able to recognize that they are not the thing, like,
oh,
Ryan,
I see what you're saying.
I'm doing the marathon training. I'm running. Okay. I'm not going to go out here and be like, hey, everybody, I'm an athlete. Like, what? Like, I don't know, man. We have this podcast and I have, the masters of the market, but I'm never going to go out there and be like, I'm the number one podcaster, right? Like, that's so stupid, man. What are you talking about? And that's where I say, like, you better be willing to show up because I am willing to die on a hill. And if you're not ready to die on a hill and I'm not calling myself those things, then you shouldn't be calling yourself those things. And I think it's only when we don't call ourselves those things. One of my favorite clips of Kobe Bryant, man, I know I keep bringing him up, but it's really, talk about a legend. He's getting interviewed after, I think, 2 games, right? And they won both games, so 2-0. And he was sitting at like the mic or whatever, like this. And he just looked pissed. And one of the reporters was like, "Are you happy?" And he goes, "No, I'm not happy." And they go, "Why aren't you happy? You're 2-0." And he goes, "Because the job's not done yet. Did we win? Did we win the season?" And the reporter goes, "No." And he goes, "Yeah, so I'm not happy until we win." And I think, like, that is just such, like, that is the prerequisite to being a real winner, is the ability for yourself to be really, really clear. And so why I'm saying all this is because I think we're getting mixed up. If you're out there as an investor claiming to be like the investor of all investors, you probably won't be making the statement that you're the investor of all investors. Like, you're the number one podcast guy. You're the big cheese. Like,
yeah, if it's actually true, you let the results speak for themselves is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and then, by the way, that opens you up to being receptive, to being open. Like, man, masters of the market for me,
that's a good point,
was a way for me to say, I don't know, right? Like, yeah. I'm willing and open and want to learn from all of you. And thanks to all of you, I have learned and I have grown. And guess what? I'm not done yet. Like, I want to learn and know more. And I never want to get to the place to say, I'm the best. I love being the underdog, the guy who's like, I'm still the underdog. And then even if, like, like, I don't know, man, that mentality just resonates with me. Always be the underdog. Always have something to learn. Like, you're never perfect. And for me, that's so important, man. And I feel like we're losing that with social media. We're losing that with the products that are coming out because it's giving us all a false reality.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. In terms of the social media side of it, everyone wants to be somebody. I think that's where it comes from. Everyone wants to be somebody, and that becomes amplified when who you are is always compared to the person that you open up and see on the platform. And so
Even
that creates
with the products, man. You're investing in an 80% yielding product because you want to be rich now. It's like, shut up. You know, you're 19 years old. You're not retired. You know, like, go get a job, put yourself to work, and become someone. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, man. I'm just
totally
I'm like,
well,
I'm revved up, dude.
I absolutely know what you're saying. It's the want of the outcome without being willing to go through the process to get the outcome. But the magic, and we've talked about this a lot as well, the essential thing that you learn when you actually do go through the process is that the outcome was nice if you get to that outcome and reach your goal. That's nice. But it's not even about that. It was about the process the entire time and continuing to play that infinite game and doing it for the love of the game. That's what you learn is really the most important component. It's like you'll hear Olympic athletes, I don't know if all of them say this, but at least one of them said once they won the gold medal, it's like, well, I don't really know what to do now. I've got it. I've got the thing that I'm working for. I don't really know where to go from here. I mean, yeah, you can get a second gold medal, but you get what I'm saying. Once they've got the outcome and did the thing for the outcome, they don't really know what's next. What do I do? Who am I now? And where do I go from here?
Dude, there is a phenomenal video of Jim Carrey. Everyone needs to YouTube this after we're done here. But there's a video of Jim Carrey, and he's winning, a Golden Globe, and it's like his like 8th or 9th, award, and so he gets up on the stage to collect his award, and he's holding it up, and he's like, first of all, he's standing like Jim Carrey, and I already know. I feel like there's like 50% of those out there who are watching this who's like, who's Jim Carrey, but he gets up there, he's holding up the award, and then he goes, I was excited to win this award tonight because now I'm 8 times winning Jim Carrey, Golden Globe winning Jim Carrey. And tonight, I know when I go home and I rest my head on my pillow, I'm going to be dreaming about becoming 9 times winning Jim Carrey of the Golden Globes. And he's just talking about how, like, it just goes on, right? And, like, you shouldn't put all the emphasis on the actual outcome. It's the process. And that's what I love when I'm running. Every mile, I'm like, who are you becoming? You're becoming someone not to freaking mess with. That's who, right? You're becoming that guy who life is going to keep hitting you and keep hitting you and keep hitting you, but you just keep getting up and getting up and getting up. And that's what the run's all about. And contrarian investing.
Yeah.
You're the guy who's going to keep, even if you lose money, you're still the guy based on experience who did the deal.
Great point, man. I think that's a really good place to wrap it up, too. That was kind of the tightly tied bow on this whole conversation.
To do the deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we covered a lot of really good ground today, guys. Let us know in the comments if you're still tuning in an hour and 10 minutes later. Let us know your thoughts. Any thoughts on what we talked about today, what you think about this whole, where we're at right now in the market, and what's not going to change moving forward, what is going to change, how you're feeling about all of it. Let us know in the comments. Ari, you have any last words before we close it out?
No, man, I think you just summed it up pretty well. I feel like I spoke a lot of craziness, tonight. I don't even know if anything I said tonight made any sense to anybody.
Sometimes we just
our whole
black out.
conversation.
Sometimes we just black out when we're talking, and the words just fly out of us. It's like an out of body experience.
Yeah, so let Ryan and I know if what we did say tonight made sense, resonated, or if it didn't at all. Also, let us know that, because your comments are always welcomed and preferred, so we get to know who's out there, who's listening. And I guess until the next go round of the deep end, we'll catch you in the next one.